Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. We've been hearing for a while now that loneliness in America is an epidemic, and it seems to be getting worse. That's why my next guest's work is so important. Life Story Club organizes small gatherings, both in person and online, where older adults get together to talk and share stories. Dr. Jennifer Wong is the executive director of Life Story Club, and she joins me now. Dr. Wong, welcome to American Voices.
It's so nice to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So, how did your interest in helping older adults get started?
Oh, I can't actually remember a time where my life hasn't involved older adults. My parents had kiddos, my brother and I, a little bit later in life. And so by the time that they had kids, which now doesn't seem all that later, they had kids in their late 30s and early 40s. But at that time, they all had friends and family members who were much older. I have an uncle who's 20 years older than my parents. So all of my cousins were at least 20 to 30 years older than I am. And we grew up in a community where older adults were just they were a part of the fabric of our daily life.
So tell me about your friend's grandmother, Grandma Mac.
My grandparents passed away by the time I was 6. And throughout my upbringing, as I mentioned, there were just a lot of older adults in my life. And one in particular, my best friend, Brian, he lived with his grandmother and his mom. And Grandma Mac, by the time we were like in high school, had retired. And she was really our main source of like transportation. Grandma Mac, she would take you wherever you wanted to go, but she also wanted to spend time with us, which was really beautiful. We loved spending time with her because it usually meant we got to have an ice cream or a treat. She had a really big sweet tooth. And she would also love to shop, not just any sort of shopping where you run in and you get the thing that you want. Say we have to go to the grocery store and grab bananas. She would walk every single aisle of a store.
Every aisle.
Every aisle. We might have only gotten bananas and laundry detergent, but we sure did walk the frozen food aisle. It just kind of became this funny joke that we had of like, we'll be there, but we got to shop with Grandma Mac. And everyone in our friend group knew what that meant. We could see you in an hour. We could see you in 3 hours. It really just depended. But Grandma Mac was really special. I love the way that she shared her life with us. Her spirit was so warm. And I think that's what drew people into sharing her experience. I think it's the way in which she could talk a bunch of 14-year-old brats to spend an afternoon with her and not get picked up from the grocery store by some other friend or somebody else. She just, always engaged with us in a really warm way. She asked us about our day. She shared a story. She laughed with us. And I think I just loved watching the way in which she navigated the world.
She even came to your graduation, didn't she? That's unusual. The grandmother of another person coming to your graduation.
I know. I'm so lucky.
Why do you think she did that? Because you must have had a very close connection.
Very close connection. Her grandson, my best friend, Brian, passed away when I was in college. And so she didn't get to go to Brian's graduation. But when it came time for me to graduate, so he passed when I was a sophomore in college. And when I was a senior in college, graduating from the University of San Francisco, both Grandma Mac and her daughter, who I call Mom Kim, they came to my graduation in San Francisco. And they arrived and are as much a part of my family, and blend super well with my parents and our friends and relatives. And she came from Atlanta, and they were only there for a short amount of time. They were really there for like the graduation and the graduation dinner. And she was so nervous because of our history of sharing desserts and sharing sweet memories. She was so nervous that she wouldn't have time for dessert. And so between our graduation and my graduation dinner, she like whispered to me and she was like, "We should get ice cream." And I was like, "But Grandma Mac, we're going to dinner." And she was like, "We should get ice cream anyways." And I have a feeling she whispered this to a number of people in our family, in our group. So sure enough, at probably about 4 o'clock before a 5 o'clock dinner reservation, um, we went to Ghirardelli Square and got the biggest sundaes I think I've ever seen. And Grandma Mac had her way. She got her ice cream with her family.
So the real question I have for you, Dr. Wong, is did you eat your vegetables anyway?
I did eat my vegetables anyways. I will, Senator Bradley, I love that because after our huge ice cream sundae, we actually went to like a Chinese banquet style dinner with like
Wow.
9 courses. And all of us were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're still eating. But we did, because who doesn't love garlic green beans, you know?
Right. Well, you mentioned her grandchild dying.
Yeah.
What struck you at the time about how Grandma Mac dealt with grief and loneliness?
She passed a number of years ago, but she watched both her grandchild and her son die while she was here on Earth with us. And
I can't imagine anything more painful.
me neither. And it didn't really occur to me how, I mean, I definitely knew how devastating that was for his mom, but I really didn't think about how devastating that was for his grandmother until a while later. And what I remember is the way in which she continued to be the matriarch of our family, and the way in which she, she silently shared ways that we could come together, whether it was her making her famous, she made this famous chocolate cake that we all loved, this like kind of volcano cake with her daughter, or the ways in which she shared stories or about her kids, and about her grandson. It was in these moments that really allowed people to just grieve, because it was a safe space where we could share stories and we could be sad. And I think her presence, and I mentioned her super warm spirit, was just one that you felt like you could be yourself. You didn't have to put on a brave face, or you didn't have to pretend like everything was fine, because obviously nothing was fine when her grandson, who had survived 2 heart transplants, dies at 20 years old. So
Yeah.
I think of her often. I get ice cream on her birthday and Brian's birthday every single year. I'll stop everything and make sure that that's a part of my life, and the ways in which she found joys and community and conversation, even on the days where you really don't want it. And it's instilled to be really important in my own life.
There's more of my conversation with Dr. Jennifer Wong. Plus, later in the show, Helen Sheehy.
With these horses, it can just be enjoying that place where you're a kid again. Remember that feeling you had when you were a kid, that the day was just endless?
You're listening to American Voices on SiriusXM. I'm Bill Bradley. Stay with us. I'm Bill Bradley. We're back now on American Voices on SiriusXM. We're continuing my conversation with Dr. Jennifer Wong. She's the executive director of Life Story Club. They organize social gatherings for older adults to get together and tell their life stories. It's a way to make friends and combat loneliness. So, Dr. Wong, so you became a psychologist, and now you're helping older adults. Tell us about Life Story Club. How does it work?
Okay, so Life Story Club founded in Brooklyn, and now we are across all 5 boroughs of New York, and we have just started to expand outside of New York. We get together older adults, somewhere between 10 and 15 older adults each week in small, intimate social clubs.
And what ages?
There's not really an age start or cutoff, although our reigning member is, I believe, turning 103 this year.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
she might have something to say about age, but I sure don't. So we allow anyone who considers themselves an older adult to join. I believe most of our members are in their late 70s and 80s, and then of course we have some 90-year-olds and our 103 year or turning 103 this year storyteller, and they join us by phone or on Zoom every single week for about an hour to 90 minutes. And these older adults have either heard of us and self referred themselves, or they've been referred to us by their health professionals or senior centers, case managers, other sorts of support from community based organizations as a way to be socially connected to their peers.
What does one expect to see at these social gatherings?
So each week they are prompted by some facilitation questions that can include name a time that you were really scared to present and tell us about a story about that, or tell us a story of your first crush, or tell us a story about the oddest job you had. So the older adult storytellers get to know these story prompts ahead of time so they can think about what type of story they want to share. And then they gather either on the phone or Zoom, or sometimes we have clubs that do like a hybrid of both, some on Zoom and some on the phone. And they share their story for about 2 to 3 minutes. And it's a way for older adults to feel like their life matters, that their stories matter, that their narrative matters, that they're seen and they're heard, and they're shared in community.
Did any older adult who does the life story process ever find somebody else who's an elderly person and fall in love?
Ooh, I don't have any love stories yet, but I'm holding out. Part of me wonders if we would know, but there are really beautiful stories of friendship and about love within our clubs. And there's one club in particular, our Cantonese club, that launched, I think, about 2 years ago. Members of the club, they hadn't seen each other in years, and they came into the club, both referred by different people. They had no idea of knowing each other, of knowing that each other were joining beforehand. And there were two of them that studied together in an English class for immigrants
Hmm,
when they arrived in New York like decades before. And they hadn't seen each other in decades.
amazing.
But they found each other again in this club. I love that because they had this shared experience about being a recent immigrant in New York City, needing to learn English, needing to learn the culture, and then they kind of went off on their separate ways only to find each other again. And
That's kind of beautiful.
and I think that that's just as good as romantic love.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's rekindling the past in a very vivid and positive way.
It's kind of like being around a
Right.
campfire or a dining table, There's
Hmm.
nothing better than sharing stories around, sharing a meal.
I guess anybody can talk, or who decides who talks?
So the idea is that everyone gets to talk. And one of the conversations that I really have appreciated was one that was led by our facilitator, Esther. Esther is one of our facilitators who was going on a vacation with some friends. And one by one, like a group of friends, maybe like 5 or so friends, and one by one, everyone sort of like dropped out. And it was ahead of a holiday weekend, and she was pretty bummed about it. And she just asked her club, she said, has there ever been a time where you had to do something by yourself that you really didn't want to do? And what I love about that was that our facilitator could kind of lean on the wisdom and experiences of the older adults to kind of help her throughout a time that was pretty disappointing, and she was pretty bummed. And one of the stories that was shared was one of our storytellers had explained that she had just recently celebrated her 80th birthday by going to, I believe, the ballet or the opera. I can't remember which, but by herself. And it was something that she had always wanted to do,
How
but that
about
she had
that?
never had the courage to go by herself. And she had asked friends, "Oh, it's my birthday. Would you want to come with me?" And they were kind of like, "No, no, no." And so she finally, and this happened for years. And so she had finally just said, "I'm going. I'm going by myself. I'm not even going to ask people this year. I'm just going to buy a ticket and I'm going to figure out transportation and I'm going to figure out a way to go there. And I'm going to wear a beautiful dress and get all dolled up and really make it spectacular."
And she did, right?
And she did. And we actually have a photo. She sent the group by email a photo of her, and she looks like Cinderella. She is in like this beautiful dress. It is fit for an occasion, at one of New York's finest theaters. She looks absolutely radiant. The red velvet floor and everything makes her beautiful blue dress pop very, very well. Her hair is up. It's magnificent. And Esther realized that if her storyteller at 80 years old could do it, she could find her way to New Jersey and go to that vacation house and have a great weekend. And so she did.
Great for her. So are there any other life stories that stayed with you?
There's one in particular that I really love. It's about Clyde. He would share stories about ways that he met his wife. He would share a lot about family life, from
Uh-huh.
how they met, how they raised children. I'm not doing him justice because the way in which he told the stories were so beautiful, but it was just about his daily life, and that's what I loved so much. But in his passing, our facilitators and our founder actually ended up going to his memorial service and had a chance to speak with his wife, Vivian. Clyde never scheduled anything on the day of Life Story Club,
Huh.
that he wouldn't leave the house. He wouldn't go to schedule a doctor's appointment. He wouldn't schedule lunch with his friends. He scheduled nothing. He wanted to preserve his Monday for Life Story Club.
How about that?
He had been talking to his club for about 5 years, and after he passed, his wife actually decided to join the club in his honor.
Hmm.
And so she has been joining the club since his passing, and she had never joined before, was never a guest, never a part of it before. She had a more active social life, and she, didn't find the immediate need of needing to be a part of that club. That was his thing, and she completely honored that. But she's reportedly found, all the same benefits that Clyde has in terms of
Right.
connection and friendship. And Ezra, the facilitator of that club, has shared that it's really fun to hear Vivian's stories because some of them are experiences with Clyde. And so it's like hearing two different sides of a story, two different perspectives of the same life experience, whether it was moving or a vacation or starting a new job. And they treat her as if she's always been there because it's like a part of her always was there.
And we're talking about 15 people roughly, right? 10 to 15?
Yeah. Yeah.
So are there moments that made you feel proud of Life Story Club and how it's helped people feel less lonely? I mean, these are some.
Thanks
Give
for
us a
asking.
couple.
Yeah. So, one thing that we do at Life Story Club is we record stories. We know that older adults don't always feel seen and heard, especially I'm imagining my own chaos of family gatherings where kiddos are running around and parents are running after them, and food is being served and somebody's late and things are always happening, right? And sometimes our older adults are on a couch in a corner, stuck in the kitchen, and less a part of our family gatherings than we would like. And so we've started recording some of these stories so that our older adults can share them with their friends, neighbors, loved ones. And there's one instance a few months ago that we heard of where a storyteller from our Heights and Hills group had a story recorded, and she, you know, at first, I'll just back up. She was hesitant about joining Life Story Club. She was like, "I don't need that. Nobody wants to hear my stories." And her case manager actually said, "Just go and listen in and see if it's something you might like." So sure enough, she did love it. She has attended weekly and she had one of her stories recorded. And so she shared it with her daughter. We like to say the story went viral. Her daughter ended up sharing it in a larger group family chat, and our storyteller started hearing from family members who she hadn't heard from in months or even years. They called to say, "Oh, I heard your story. I love that story. I had never heard that story. What's going on in your life?" It sparked this connection that was absent before.
I think that is terrific. If you begin with the premise that people are lonely, you bring them together with Life Story Club, relationships are established, you want them to actually sit face to face, and have meeting.
Yeah, and another one that just really feels like something so great, and I actually just saw this group last week. We were in New York. We were in the Chinatown area sharing lunch together. Is one of our groups from IFH got together, and so they're a healthcare partner, and this club has been getting together for years. I think in about 2022, they got together for the first time, I believe, at an oyster bar with their facilitator. And they had been growing these connections by phone for quite some time, but quarantine and the pandemic had kind of prevented them from getting together in person. So finally, we got them together when it was safe to do so. And our facilitator asked the group to share stories about a memorable celebration or gathering. And one of our storytellers who, has always brought a story during a week and is never shy to share, was pretty shy. And our facilitator, Ezra, asked him, "What's coming up for you? Do you have a short story to share?" And he mentioned that, he was just reflecting on his own life. And he was a single bachelor man who never married and didn't have family like the other members of his club had. He was an immigrant, and so his family wasn't here, and he never had kids. And while he had chosen family, that sometimes these types of memories were just not a part of his own, traditions, family traditions. And so hearing this, one of the other storytellers, Yvonne, quickly, jumped in and said that that was so funny because she felt like he was her family.
Hmm.
And so just this image of a older German immigrant and a wonderful woman who thought of him as family, as a, Black woman, and they quickly embraced. They went years with talking to each other but never seeing each other in person. It just really really struck our facilitator, and what a perfect moment. To this day, even last week, she asked where her brother was. And Bernard, if he ever joins a story club before Yvonne, will always ask, "Hey, have you seen my sister, or is my sister coming?"
That's beautiful. Well, in addition to joining a Life Story Club, do you have any advice for people listening who know someone who seems isolated or lonely? How can the average person help?
I love this question. I think about my 92-year-old neighbor when you ask this question. I live in an apartment complex that is full of mostly young people and middle-aged people, and we are always rushing. We are always rushing, going to, a soccer practice, school, work, the grocery store, whichever. And without fail, when you are rushing, our 92-year-old neighbor, Lucinda, will come outside and ask you a question. And it is a reminder that it is okay to pause and have conversations. It's a reminder that she lives alone and English is not her first language. She's Spanish speaking. And it's a reminder to connect at times. And I think the biggest suggestion I have is to be in conversation with the people in your world, whether it's your 92-year-old neighbor while you're rushing to work, or it's somebody like Grandma Mac walking the aisles of a grocery store, or it's Bernard, who you think is living his greatest bachelor life, but is missing, family in general. It's a reminder to me to see people and hear people and to check in really, and not just say, "Hey,
Mhm.
how are you?" and them answer fine. It's how are you? And the other day, I was reminded about like how we check in with people. I was with my wonderful friends Paul and Anna, and with their kid who's about 3, and I asked him, as an adult with no kids of her own, I saw him after on a weekday, and I asked him how school was. And Paul told me, because the answer is, it was fine. It was great. I had fun. And Paul told me to ask him what he did with his hands at school. And that really stayed with me about how we check in with people of different ages. Asking Lucinda
Mhm.
how her day is when she spends 95% of her day inside her home and the other 5%, running to the mail, her mailbox or the trash. Her day is probably the same, but asking her, who called you today? Who did you talk to? Because her phone is always ringing. When will you see your granddaughter next?
Right. The specific questions are always bringing people out. Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't leave it for them
yeah.
to construct their life. You write their life by asking them questions.
Yeah. I think that for me is what we can do better every single day. And some days we're going to have the capacity to do that, and some days we won't. But on the
Right.
days that we have the capacity to do it, I think we should do it.
Well, Dr. Wong, you're helping to make sure that people feel a little less lonely in America. And I salute what you're doing to combat loneliness. I've been speaking with Dr. Jennifer Wong. She's the executive director of Life Story Club. And to find out more, visit us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley. And on Instagram, it's Bill Bradley on SiriusXM. Thank you so much, Dr. Wong.
Thank you.
Pleasure to talk to you. Keep up the great work.
Amazing.
Is this the part where you find out I'm there for you? You find out I'm there for you.
Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.